Hi everybody, I'm here like usual. Let me ask you an easy question to open this up. Are you cherishing your life? Are you making the most of your day, your week, your month, time at school, time at home? Just being the best you can be? Well, I sure hope so. YouTube statistics tells me that a majority of my audience is old enough to have made plenty of worthwhile memories. And if not, don't worry, because unless you're like really old or you have a terrible day and just get hit by a car going really fast or something, chances are you got time to make some more. Recently though, I've been reflecting on my past, you know? I've been on both YouTube and the planet long enough to where I can already see myself aging and growing and evolving. Yet at the same time, it only feels like recently that I've started to roll into the person I see in the reflection every day. It's bittersweet, but necessary. There's a lot of stuff going on at the times, but if you don't at least take a minute to appreciate the journey and instead choose to get to the destination as fast as possible, is it worth it? To an extent, I feel like the idea of nostalgia gets chucked around a lot. Nostalgia this, nostalgia that. We gotta bring back old franchises for the nostalgia. Gotta go ponder on the past. You know, sooner or later, we're gonna have people getting nostalgic over nostalgia. 10 years from now, a kid who wore a Zelda Triforce shirt's gonna have nostalgia about wearing that shirt when he was nostalgic about playing Minish Cap on his Game Boy Advance that he got from his grandma for his birthday. But now we're in the icky, cloudy, gray future. Fashions change. The GBA isn't around. McDonald's is a sad place. It doesn't have play places anymore. They want you out as fast as possible. And neither is Grandma. Grandma's gone. Now we look ahead for what to expect, but every once in a while when you get that faint whiff of nostalgic scent in the wind, it feels wonderful, even if you can be nostalgic for the wind, if that's your thing. I know I had like an autumn wind blow through my nose and I was like, nostalgia blast. Like, it was like that. I can't even be high and mighty in this situation. The fact of the matter is that nostalgia is a big part of my life. It's a big reason that I'm in the position I am now. A lot of the things I cover tie with people's nostalgia. That is how I get views on YouTube. And it's great, and I'm grateful for it. But because of that, I think it's even funnier when people inevitably get nostalgic to my content. Because, you know, I've seen it with old creators that I used to watch, and maybe they stepped down and they retired. If that happens to me, I think it'll be funny, as it is just full circle-ish. I just don't know what to expect. For some reason, I can never see myself on the giving end, because a big thing I associate with my own nostalgia lies in the collection of shows found within or correlating with PBS Kids. Now, some of these might not even be PBS Kids content, I just associate it with being there. Now, for all the youngsters around, this was, simply put, pretty freaking neato. Essentially, this network was a good transition from pure baby entertainment to some more vulgar kids media with heavy quotations. I wish my house played a bit more PBS stuff as I got older. It was so funny because I was unable to watch PBS Kids, but then also I was told I wasn't allowed to watch Adventure Time. I completely ignored it. The best way I would go around describing PBS is as a small, cozy suburban town with a lot of trees, whereas Nickelodeon's like an intimidating city where you don't feel like a resident there, and everything is gross and smells like weed. Disney Channel to me is like a mini golf course you visit as a kid, and then you get back there older only to realize it fell off a ton between those years you were gone. Cartoon Network is just Atlanta. In my eyes, PBS Kids is literally the Nintendo of kids channels. Nickelodeon's Microsoft, Cartoon Network is Sony, Disney can be Steam, but PBS is Nintendo. It's full of a good amount of exclusive content and appeals a bit more to a different crowd. I think this, compared to the other ones, at least respects the audience a bit more. Commercials of this era were brutal for the children at the time. Every time I wake up, I'm grateful I don't need to hear the Shirley Temple Little Darling Collection commercial anymore. PBS Kids at least had the pleasure of showing more personalized commercials. We weren't bombarded with a wall of agony and advertising, only advertising specifically about PBS stuff going on, which I'm okay with. That was much nicer. I look at the channel and I feel like a number of these shows accomplished what they sought out to do. A huge part of PBS Kids is just the lineup, because in contrast, there wasn't anything else quite like it. Looking back at all the channels meant for a younger audience, you're able to see the general tones of everything. And even though Nickelodeon was full of failings both in terms of what they ran with and in terms of what they did behind the scenes, I guess Nick Jr. was alright. You know, Blue's Clues, Dora, Yo Gabba Gabba, Team Umizoomi, Bubble Guppies, Backyardigans, Wonder Pets, Max and Ruby, Ni Hao Kai Lan, Wow Wow Wubsy, and the other ones that I'll probably talk about on the other channel eventually. You had something special here, the special sauce, the loveliest lamb chop of all. We had all this cool stuff to check out on the— oh. The website's different. Yeah, for some reason when I started this, I thought that the network wasn't gonna have new shows. I genuinely thought they were just gonna run the same 20 to 30 shows forever. But I only recognized about half of the featured things here. And there's more that aren't even featured here. I remember Thomas the Train showing up, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Caillou, like, Bernstein Bears. Was Zulu Patrol here? I don't even remember. This is what I mean. Does anybody know what Bo on the Go is? Were they on PBS? I don't know if Teletubbies was on here. I'm losing it. Nobody was documenting my life at this point. My parents should have known I wanted to make a biography. They should have been ready for that. Of the ones I remember, it's entirely possible that they didn't play on PBS depending on location and stuff, like how SpongeBob is on MTV in some locations. But regardless, let me take a look at my most watched, my personal favorites, what I enjoyed. I think Arthur is a good start. By technicality, I would argue Arthur is, or at least was, a face of PBS Kids. This bad boy lasted for 25 years. 25 years of this thing that's supposed to be an anteater, but honestly, you can never tell. This setup's really mundane, just follows a group of kids across 25 seasons as they enjoy their time in an elementary school. A good comparison is a Tamer Bob's Burgers. Now, I must admit, I have had to watch and babysit a decent amount of times, so I do have a lot more recent memories with a number of PBS shows, and I think Arthur is a good example of how the network transitioned. At some point, the animation and art style would go from being hand-drawn to flash, but I can't be too upset. The main thing I notice is the saturation increase, and the general framing is a bit different. Overall, I think the change in animation was a big thing I don't really like about modern PBS. Like, when you look back, a lot of these shows have a watercolor style. A lot of them have just a softness to them, a kindness. I almost see it in the books that they're based off of. A lot of these shows are based off these original stories quite literally coming to life and being animated in this endearing way. I'm sure a majority of the reasoning lies in the budgeting, but this feels like when older people argue that their times were the better times or something like that. Except this time I'm right. I'm entirely right. This is non-negotiable. The children are wrong for liking the only thing they know how to enjoy. Arthur itself, in actuality, is good. Its legacy mostly comes from that one Arthur Fist meme, Peanut Butter Gamer, and that little prick DW. I always hated her. I saw this stupid child on my screen and I knew I hated her from the get-go. For no reason at all, DW will show up in episodes and make it everybody else's problems. Like, just let Arthur enjoy his hobbies and learn by himself. He might be a bit of a dweeb, but I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for you. If she has no enemies, I am dead. Arthur's friends included Buster, the best friend type, just a cool dude overall. He got his own show for a little bit. It doesn't matter. Okay, what are you gonna do with Buster? I enjoyed Brain and Francine for balancing out the general cast and when Arthur needed a larger group of friends. And then I would describe Muffy as cannon fodder. I did not care for Muffy, and I think Binky was my favorite. Originally, he was like a school bully type, but then he got swapped to a regular. He was very nice. One of the most prominent memories I have is him eating spaghetti. I don't know why. I think Arthur in specific specializes in covering topics that rarely even get brought up in more mature media. It's been credited for covering really specific topics like diabetes, physical or mental conditions, family, siblings, community. Generally, I think this is the lifeblood of PBS Kids. It's not dedicating time to teach each of the basics like spelling or math most of the time, but it goes a step further and takes time to explain how life works in science and in social situations. Like no other source of youth entertainment, I think, quite takes this route. Not to mention, it gets amplified when you consider that the animation and presentation that goes alongside it. To round out the Mount Rushmore of PBS Kids alongside Arthur, I would also add Clifford, Curious George, and the last one's gotta be Sesame Street, but we're gonna talk about the street later. And this is just based off of what I saw. I have no idea if these were the most popular shows in comparison, but this is just how I perceived the network. Clifford and Curious George are really similar to Arthur in which that they're meant to teach good lessons about the surrounding world. To me, Curious George was always like aiming toward a slightly younger crowd, but the premise was simple enough. You got the man in the yellow hat and his dear pal George the monkey, and together they learn about cool and awesome things like farming, healthcare, airports, and probably the stock market when George gets his little monkey hands over a keyboard. I'm genuinely curious about Curious George having internet access. I would place bets on if he discovers streaming or ASMR first. I don't want to expose Curious George to ASMR. I like the Curious George movie a lot. That one song that was a meme a little while back. Never watched too much of the show though, but you know, it was a good time. About the same with Clifford, maybe a little bit more than George. The main difference between Arthur and Curious George is the child has access to a kaiju, therefore instantly decimating the home budgeting because of dog food. To me, Clifford always seemed like the type of thing you would wish you had and then instantly regret when you had the specific thing. It makes you obscenely upset that you're stuck with it now. Additional examples of this phenomenon includes babies, Thanksgiving food, and 230 hours of Wizard 101 footage and knowledge of an entire story with knowledge and a script so long it may as well be a thesis paper. Now I know that PBS Kids was more world emotional and social-oriented shows, but they still had some series that focused on your traditional reading, writing, and arithmetic. Martha Speaks was alright, not a personal favorite of mine, but I guess my timing and siblings kind of dragged me into absorbing the character. Sibling democracy has embittered me, but essentially this show is about a dog who gets her grubby nubbies on some alphabet soup, making her capable of human speech. It makes me wonder how many dogs were force-fed alphabet soup because of children seeing the show and wanting a talking dog. Word Girl also comes to mind. I don't think I can do this show much justice, but I remember it being like a legitimately really funny thing. The best way to describe it was an educational Powerpuff Girls, but in my opinion, better.
My favorite word is cracker. It was my first word when I was a baby, and it's just a fun word to say. Cracker.
Sid the Science Kid. It was called this, but 80% of Sid's adventures were just him and his malformed pals dancing in the playground or him singing in the car. I'm sure there was more to it, but I don't like how any of these characters look. Gerald looks like he's gonna lunge at me or whoever makes eye contact with him. I didn't even bother rewatching any Sid content, never really cared for him. Part of my modern distaste for Sid is the lost media pilot. There's not many images of this show, and usually when I think of the pilot designs, I think of them being worse. Classic Sid actually looks like he knows what he's talking about. The real one looks throwable. He looks like he weighs 9 pounds and would ragdoll if he got hit too hard. There's also Cyber Chase. How is Cyber Chase still running? I remember watching an older Odd Ones Out video where he was just shocked about the same fact regarding Cyber Chase. That was in 2018. It is now 2025. The show is 23 years old. Now, at least with Arthur, it makes sense. A collection of stories following kids in typical social situations, teaching kids what is and isn't acceptable. Clifford is a big red dog, so you know what? Fair enough. Why the hell is Cyber Chase still around on an all-star 20-year run? Digit the Cyber Chase bird has outlived the Confederation 4 times over. I mean, the premise is cool. Cyber Chase follows 3 kids who, after my decades of living, I still haven't bothered to learn their names as they frolic around on the internet or something and stop bad people like the hacker as he ruins the internet society that lives there. If these kids are learning problem solving and math on a daily basis for 20 years straight, they should be geniuses by now. The weird thing I would say about Cyber Chase is that even though it's lived so long, there's only like 150 episodes. This is a reoccurring thing across PBS shows. Despite their gargantuan runtimes and acclaim, they don't have too many episodes. They're very reliant on reruns. Arthur ran for just as long and only had about 250 episodes. Clifford, 65. Curious George ran 16 years with 200 episodes in a movie. Word Girl got 128 in a movie across 7 years. And this one is the biggest outlier. It's still not even that much. And then there's Sesame Street. Sesame Street, oh, this is preschooler One Piece. In order to watch all 4,700 plus episodes across a year, you would need to be watching 12 episodes, roughly 6 hours of Elmo and Cookie Monster and Snuffleupagus. This means that they've been averaging 1.6 episodes a week for over 55 years. Elmo is going to watch us all perish of natural causes with a puppety grin. What do you even say about Sesame Street? Like 99% of the world knows what Big Bird is. Ask an average American to name 3 presidents not from the 21st century or on Mount Rushmore, and there's a coin flip if they can do it. Tell them to name 5 Sesame Street characters without hesitation, no issues, and they'll add a couple Muppets on the side. Sesame Street is a basic puppet show that covers everything under the sun. Like I like that we treat Elmo like an immortal celebrity. I wish we did more goofy stuff like this. Now, real quick, I want to do a lightning round between a decent amount of shows I remember, but for one reason or another, don't particularly hold that many memories with them. But they do have some neat stuff going on. Dragon Tales was a little basic, mainly 2 kids living in a dragon world. Here's my fan art. I spent 30 minutes on it. Those dinosaurs didn't even survive a meteor. Why do they have a train? Also, I always remember them abandoning their dad and a couple of the siblings. Why did they have a train station but not a proper home? They lived in a nest. I'm moving on. I watched Pinkalicious and Peterific for like 5 minutes. Didn't like the art style. That's okay though. Apparently there was a Cat in the Hat show. I never watched it. Saw the commercials. They just latched onto my frontal lobe forever. Same with Daniel Tiger. I was too old for this man, but what am I doing here? I could have been a lawyer. I remember this one from Pop Tropica. Does this count as a memory? Superwise's entire legacy is burdened by Protogen. I don't remember the show looking like this. Their heads seem really breakable. I know these shows are iconic, but I really do wish I had more to say about Thomas the Train, Bernstein Bears, and Bob the Builder. Thomas in specific, I remember playing that game on the V-Smile. Let me know if you guys want to hear about the V-Smile. I'd love to talk about it. Ew, why did they do these ones? I wish I remembered more of the puppet shows. These were terrific. We should make puppets more mainstream. I never watched watched this one. That's cool. I watched like an episode maybe. I genuinely never realized Reading Rainbow was PBS content. I hope LeVar Burton's having a lovely day though. There was another show I completely forgot about and only remembered recently. Animalia. Essentially a couple kids find another world in a library where it's completely different. They have all their friends there. It's the same premise as Cyber Chase and Dragon Tales in different fonts. Still love this one. I love this one just as much as PBS Kids love doing the alternate world thing. Except this one justifiably horrified me. Look at these animals. At least one of them looks like chain smokers. But in the end, I wanted to save my favorite shows for the end. The two that I remembered the most, I appreciate the most, and the ones I wish I expressed to my parents. Hey, I like these ones. Please do not switch it to iCarly. I want to watch this over iCarly. I like iCarly, but I would rather watch this, please. Between the Lions was this puppet show with segmented bits like Cliffhanger. I think this was the thing that got me my interest in writing. This one's easily my favorite. This whole video making process came from the Lions. I just loved writing so much. That's my favorite part, and these guys were responsible for that. I can't forget about that. I know I'm not talking about it that much, but truthfully, this is such an important show to me, and is part of the reason I am who I am today. And then with the Rough Ruffman show, this was incredible. I just love this one. Essentially, this was a game show where half a dozen kids would compete across 20 episodes to become the grand champion of the season. Episodes would split the kids off randomly into different locations, episode to episode, and a decent chunk of them would have a couple kids back at the main area doing quizzing to earn points from there. I really wanted to be on this show growing up. I really wanted to fetch for Rough Ruffman, go on these adventures, learn and see the world. Maybe someday I'll show up to a game show like this. I would like to. Until then, I can't help but imagine myself being one of those 30 lucky kids across 5 seasons who went on PBS-funded adventures like this. You know, part of this look back makes me wonder how much of PBS was nostalgia and how much of it was legitimate quality. I look back at these respective shows and can appreciate their intention, along with how they stuck with people. Everyone nowadays has their personal favorite cartoons throughout the big 3, but I don't think we give enough love to that humble 4th provider of youth entertainment. I look at PBS Kids now and I feel the same as I did with the other big channels. I'm unsure. Nickelodeon has failed to produce a show I legitimately enjoy in years upon years. Cartoon Network's doing a bit better in quality, but streaming and Warner Bros aren't doing them any favors. Disney's always gonna be fine because of Disney Plus. I don't know if they know how to produce a successful cartoon that isn't Phineas and Ferb. I would say their quality's the best, but their behind the scenes are what are dooming them in the end. Now, I know that technically some of these shows weren't under PBS in some places, but you got the idea, the intention, the love behind these shows. To me, PBS Kids is always perceived as a step behind the other younger animated and sitcom networks of these decades, and I thought it was deserving of some proper attention for its legacy and its impact. Modern PBS Kids is full of new faces, the baton has been passed, and even though I might not have that familiarity with this new bunch of edutainment, hey, maybe in the future when I have to watch like a nephew or a niece, I'll make them watch PBS Kids, and they'll learn something. Or maybe 2 years from now, we'll get one of these newer shows, and it gets an underrated masterpiece YouTube video or something. When I look through the modern catalog, I saw one of these newer shows that caught my eye. Eleanor Wonders Why. It has a lot of that magic my batch of favorites had, with that watercolor stylization, the general mundane, relaxed premise. It's flash animation now, like a lot of the shows, but it's a bit more expected, especially considering the long-running shows converted during their runs. I think they're doing the best they can with what they have. I wouldn't say give this one a watch, you know, I feel like we're all a little bit too old for this one. Plus, my videos are a million zillion times better than anything you can find anywhere else. But hey, maybe if you got some younger family members or some kids, turn on some PBS Kids. See if it still holds up, see if you still enjoy it, see if you approve of the new cartoons. I know I probably will. But there was a lot of canceled shows throughout here. Seems unfortunate when that happens, because you never know when something's gonna end. I said that you never